Hey there, I'm Dan Brodsky. I've used my background in higher education and corporate training to help hundreds of folks take charge of their career. So here's what you can expect on this show. I sit down with another career expert to talk about topics designed to help you in the short and long-term parts of your career. Things like sharpening your resume and job searching, being an effective communicator, and sometimes just being more confident. So settle in, get cozy, and welcome to Career Focus. Hey everyone, welcome back to Career Focus. I am sitting down with Hayley Dawson. She and I met last year around the holiday season after I wrapped up season 1. A connection of ours introduced us because we share a lot of the same interests and passions. I quickly realized that A, she's super knowledgeable and kind, but B, I just have to have her on the show. To give you some background on kind of who she is also, Hayley is just a really kind, warm personality, and it really shines through every time you listen to her speak or you chat with her. And she's also just really educated, very smart. She's got a BA, an MA, and most recently a PhD from the University of Roehampton. She also is just a content producing machine. She is a speaker, a writer, a facilitator, an educator, and founder of a career development company. She and I share a lot of the same passions, especially when it comes to helping young professionals and quarter life professionals in all things career. So, Hayley, I am so grateful and glad that you joined me on Career Focus today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm a bit worried about how I'm going to follow your introduction now.
Oh, you're going to do just fine. I've heard you on other podcasts before and you seem quite comfortable. So I'm confident and I know you are too.
Thank you.
How's life been lately?
Actually, really good. I recently quit a career that I had worked in for the past 8 years, which was my research career, all to build, as you said, a career development company. And so I'm now in week 2 of full-time being a founder, which is, it's really exciting.
That is exciting. And you and I have chatted for, I guess, 7 or 8 months now. And when we first started, we were talking a lot about side hustles, and that's definitely something going on for me, but now it is your full-time hustle. So congratulations on making that clean break. I know that leaving your research career may not have been the easiest decision or an easy transition in general, but kudos to you. That's great.
Thank you so much. It just goes to show careers are not ladders. There's always these twists and turns that we can take, and it's just embracing them.
Well, Hayley, speaking of careers not being super linear and not exactly like a ladder, your career has taken kind of a squiggly line. Walk us through your journey up until now, where you're officially on your own.
When I was younger, I went through this phase of wanting to teach anything that I was remotely interested in. So I wanted to be a swimming teacher, a karate teacher, a music teacher, like they all did the rounds. But when it came to choosing what to study at university, I was going through a Spanish phase. And so nobody was surprised when that's what I chose to do at university, because it was just my phase at the time. So I went to uni, did a degree in Spanish, and that came with a whole load of opportunities, like living in Madrid and Barcelona for a few years, doing a master's in translation and interpreting at a Spanish university. And then that led me to working as a freelance translator and interpreter, where I specialized in something called audiovisual translation, which is subtitling and dubbing things like films, documentaries, TV series, anything audiovisual. And that was a really cool job because I got to watch my favorite shows months before they were released, translate them. And I really liked subtitling and the accessibility aspect of it. So I did a PhD in translation and media accessibility and got involved in loads of different research projects there. And that's how the research part of the career sort of started as well. So then I spent a few years at a research institute that specializes in making products and services accessible for disabled people and older people. And now I run a career development company. So those are the highlights, because I think I worked out the other day that actually I've had 13 jobs in 16 years.
Wow.
But mainly because there have been so many things overlapping, and I had so many different interests, but some of it was from need and necessity as well, because I come from a very low income background and usually had a full-time job while having a part-time job as well. But I was lucky enough to work out how to sort of incorporate my passions into any kind of side project that I had going on too. And yeah, I call it a squiggly career because there is this brilliant book by Helen Tupper and Sarah Ellis called The Squiggly Career. And it's all about ditching the career ladder and designing your career. And I really feel like that's what I've done within my career.
I love that. What stands out to me is that you have a very equitable approach to all things career, and a lot of what we've talked about. That accessibility piece that you mentioned is so important to anything that you're doing, especially as an educator. Most of us want to learn things, right? And the fact that you were a supporter and a creator on anything that folks were consuming, the fact you're making it accessible to others is really cool. So that's great.
The thing that I love the most, it's been like this golden thread, I think. Although the career's been really squiggly, that's the one thread that's sort of held everything together,
Definitely. So what was your inspiration to having a clean break from a corporate career and creating something for you to focus on as the sole focus on a full-time basis?
Sure. So the inspiration for it was quite personal, if I'm honest, because I had that squiggly career full of work that required this technical ability. So lesson planning when I was an English teacher, or command of language when I was a Spanish translator, or accuracy that I needed as a subtitler, data analysis as a researcher, strategic planning as a leader. There were all of these technical skills that I needed. But although that I did, or I was told that I did great work and I received great feedback in those roles, I've rarely been praised on my technical skills specifically. And instead, I noticed that I've been complimented on things like confidence, pragmatism, curiosity, ability to self-reflect, empathy, and then the way, for example, that I interact with and support other people. And so although I've worked across different settings and sectors, I've built my career and life on these things that I like to call human skills. And that was the inspiration, really, when I realized that human skills are the skills that matter the most. And they're the skills of the future, right? I reckon that in a world that's becoming so much more reliant on technology and AI, they help us to be an easy person to work with. They help us to build career longevity, to lift other people up, to understand what we want from ourselves and our careers, and to really transform the impact that people have on society and the organizations in turn have on society as well. And so me having that clean break from a career that I'd built, the squiggly career that I'd built working for someone else and for different organizations, me building the Blocks as a career development company is my contribution towards a better professional and personal life for everyone.
I've had somewhat of a squiggly line career myself. I've been in various industries, and I think what is the common denominator among all those shifts and changes, it's not just soft skills, it's having the personal approach and the human skills, which I think go a little bit further than just the technical skills and the soft skills. So I'd love for you, Hayley, to kind of break down what is the difference between soft skills and human skills?
So I think the difference between soft skills and human skills is the outcomes of using that skill. So a person can have well-developed soft skills like communication, time management, and a strong work ethic, but that doesn't mean that they're an easy person to work with, or that they support other people, or that they're out to create a positive impact, right? Human skills, I think, do lead to those outcomes. So that's the main difference. And there's some overlap between soft skills and human skills, but the human skills are the ones that create a lasting impact on people and organizations. And so I'll answer this by way of a story, if I may. So years ago, I used to work with two people in the same office. The first one was very good technically at their job. They had loads of soft skills, such as problem solving, time management, flexibility, but they were a really difficult person to work with because they didn't listen, like really, truly listen to understand, you know. They weren't self-aware and they stayed within the lines of their job and just refused to move. And also they were incapable of giving anyone else in the team praise or congratulating them on things that went well, right? So on paper, they were doing their job. But the second person did their job just fine, but they were curious and they liked experimenting to improve processes and improve ways of working, right? They showed compassion and empathy towards other people, and they were always the first person to offer someone help when they needed it, to congratulate someone on a promotion, to speak up if they saw something unjust happening. So who was the person that I watched fly in their career? It was the second person. You know, on paper, the first person was better at their job, but they were missing the things that really, really mattered, and the things that transform organizations, the things that support other people and lift other people up. Whether the second person knew what they were doing or not, I don't know, but they tapped into their human skills and focused on the outcomes of their actions and the outcomes of what they were doing. And I think, you know, there is some overlap between soft skills and human skills. You know, you can be a great communicator, but are you being a great communicator to help somebody else? That I would then put that in a category of a human skill, for example. So there's some gray area, there's some overlap, but it's all in the outcomes, I think, that happen from you using your human skills.
Do you feel like emotions come into those outcomes? You know, if I were to describe Hayley, like I mentioned at the beginning, you're very warm, you're kind, you're passionate, which I can feel, I can sense. Do you feel like emotions and the way others make you feel are somewhat of an anecdotal way to measure those outcomes, to determine human skills versus soft skills a bit?
100%. Yeah. And, you know, it reminds me of that well-known quote. I might butcher it a bit, but it's people won't remember what you do or say, but they will remember how you made them feel, right? Mm-hmm. We've all heard that quote in some way or another. And so how you make people feel, I think, really depends on how strong your human skills are in the way that you've just described.
Excellent. And I didn't know about human skills until you and I started chatting last year. And I think that gray area is a little bit magnified because now soft skills is something that we all hear and really emphasize quite a bit when it comes to performance and when it comes to general job satisfaction. What are your soft skills compared to hard skills or technical skills? Those human skills and how you're making others feel, I think, is really critical. So really great explanation. And I always love a good story, so don't hold back there. Hopefully you have more.
I do. I've got some more.
Awesome. So for someone that maybe is starting their career or they've worked for a couple years and they're starting to realize the importance of these human skills, what are a couple that folks should know?
I'll approach this by, I think, breaking down some human skills and the outcomes that we get from them, right? There are some sets of human skills, I think, that will really help people get ahead in their career. The first set I'd say is courage, confidence, and self-belief. Now, confidence is the human skill that people tell me they most want to build. But you don't always need confidence to do something big and scary. You need courage. Now, when we want to do something that puts the fear of God into us, we often think that we need to feel confident before doing that thing. So take like quitting your job as an example, right? You want to move on, but you hold off quitting or applying for other jobs because you don't feel confident enough. But focusing on confidence is holding us back because what we really need to do is tap into our courage. And courage is what allows us to, you've probably heard, feel the fear and do it anyway. Courage allows us to take the first steps, to get moving, to get learning. And our careers are built by taking lots of first steps, lots of baby steps, right? And I'm experiencing this right now, building a company. Did I feel confident quitting my stable job to give my business the best shot? No, but I was courageous enough to take the first step. And in taking that first step, now I'm doing it and now I'm building my confidence in that area, right? So the first thing is that human skills can help you take the first step. Now there's another set, or a pair, which I think is curiosity plus experimentation, right? That there was one question that all of us were asked when we were children that put us into a box. And that question was, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it made us believe that we had to choose one thing, one path, but you don't. And you might feel a little lost at the start of your career, like I did, like you probably did, like everyone does. But the good news, I think, is that feeling lost is actually an opportunity to get curious, to experiment, and to find things that you enjoy. And if you're early on in your career, the next 10 years of your career and life are for experimentation and curiosity. They're for that pair, because they're the only ways to really, truly work out what you like and what you're good at. And so the second thing I think is that human skills can help guide you in your career. And this really translates to getting ahead in your career as well, because with curiosity and experimentation, You're going to avoid wasting time on a career that you thought you wanted and that you thought you had to stick at even when you were hating it, or that you thought you had to do because your family were telling you to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this third set, another set, which is my favorite, and that is the human skill of supporting and celebrating other people. I think that no matter how early on or late down the line we are in our career, we've all experienced somebody who we can call an encourager or a discourager. Now, my mum, for example, is an encourager. She tells me this really cliche thing, which is to reach for the stars. She sends people good luck cards when something big is coming up, and she congratulates people every time they achieve something or have a small win. And it's lovely, but I've come across way more discouragers in my career. And there is one that really, really sticks out like a sore thumb. And that is that years ago, I was working at a university in like support services for students, and I was doing a PhD at the same time. And I had a book review published in an academic journal. Okay, it wasn't a research project that I had done, but it was something that I had written that was published. And I felt really, really proud of it and showed it to a really senior academic. And this person said to me, she said, "Well, it's hardly research, is it?" And I just felt my pride plummet to zero. I was about 24, 25 at the time. I felt so silly for even showing this person something I was proud of. And I just wanted the ground to just swallow me whole. Mm-hmm. Now, that academic was a discourager. And I think that everyone, literally every single person in the world, is trying to find their way in life and in their career. And some people are struggling more than others. So I think that this human skill is particularly important, supporting and celebrating others, because no matter who you are or where you are in life or how you feel about yourself, you shouldn't be breaking people down. You should be building them up and celebrating them and being an encourager, because it's going to get you noticed. People will remember you. And the more that you support the opportunities that other people have and that other people get, the more opportunities will come your way as well. So that's another example of, it's the outcomes of using your human skills that will help you to get ahead in your career.
It's broken down so well. Hayley, I've got to say, you've got a way with words, which I'm sure you've heard before. We talk in my household a lot about vibes, good vibes, right? And we use it somewhat in a joking manner. But I think that maybe folks have heard of a personality hire before. If you can make people feel good, feel confident, feel more courageous, and help yourself and others perform better and feel better at work, then in a lot of ways, you've done your job differently or better than other people. That story you gave about providing that publication to someone much more senior than you. You mentioned you were 25 at the time. If you were to do that today, would you approach that differently?
Today, I know who my encouragers are. And so instead of wanting to share my work with anybody, regardless of who they are, I know who my people are to go to. I know who are sat on my bench as like supporters, as it were, right? Mm-hmm. I've got a couple of friends who I can go to where if something bad is happening, I will go to them and I will tell them about it and I'll get their advice. And if something good is happening, I will go to them as well and I will share it. I just know to not share it with everybody now because you can get knocked down, right? But so early on in your career, it can be really difficult to know who's an encourager, who's a discourager. Or, sometimes I like to call them destroyers because they like really can destroy our confidence, our self-belief and everything. But it's seeking out the people who are going to support you and being a supporter for people as well, so that they put you on their bench and that they share their wins with you as well. You know, that's what I'd do differently. I wouldn't have gone like today. I wouldn't go to a person like that to share a win with.
So it sounds to me like people that are going to help build you up, whether it's through constructive criticism or praise, those are the folks you'd reach out to. And I agree with that. I feel you there. What are some quick ways that you feel folks can measure their use of human skills into what they do?
I love this question. There are ways to tap into building your human skills and growing them over time. It's definitely not an overnight thing. I think the first thing to remember is that the strength of our human skills can be measured in how people respond to us. Now, what I mean by that is, do people come to you for advice? If they do, that might indicate that you're a good listener. Does your manager ask you to, for example, run the weekly catch-up meetings in their absence? If they do, that might indicate that you're showing signs of confidence. And do people share their good news with you, right? That might show that they know that you're going to support and celebrate them. So if people don't do any of these things with you, it might show that your human skills maybe aren't as strong in that area. And so that's an interesting way of identifying what you're already good at and where your gaps are as well. Mm-hmm. And I think the second thing is to understand where you're going. It's really important to understand where you are now. And funnily enough, there's a human skill that can help you with that, and it's called self-reflection. Let's take confidence as an example, right? Think about where you are now with your confidence and ask yourself, so how do you feel when you need to speak up in a meeting or do a client presentation or let somebody know at work that they've done something wrong? And then think about what you can do to get more comfortable with those things, right? And try something new every week to improve your confidence. And I say every week because we've gotten into a habit, I think, of annualized reflection. Mm-hmm. And we leave any kind of self-reflection or development until the end of the year or until our next annual review, or if we think we've got a pay rise or promotion coming up. But to grow, we really need to move away from annualized reflection, because otherwise we can only give ourselves an opportunity to grow once a year, and move towards weekly reflection. And that way you'll soon notice patterns and you'll be able to measure your growth over time. And you'll be able to improve quicker than if you tap into what I call annualized self-reflection. There are just a couple of ways that you can spot gaps, know what you're good at, and measure your growth over time, I think.
You mentioned, how are people responding to you based on certain skills that you might be showcasing? So for example, if they're asking for your feedback, maybe that means that you're a good listener. I think those are great examples of human skills. But would you say that if you're, let's say, not showcasing good human skills, if people are coming to you with thoughts or feelings that are negative, that is a way for you to measure if you're not using human skills effectively?
That's a really interesting question. And do you know what? Throughout all of these different jobs and experiences that I've had, I've come across people who haven't had many human skills at all, and some people who have them really, really well developed, mm-hmm. whether they realize it or not. The people who have human skills that aren't as well developed, people usually tend to bypass them in the workplace. Mm-hmm. Not even going to them with negative thoughts or feedback or things like that, but they actually just get bypassed and often ignored as well, which is really sad, I think, that people are getting ignored because, okay, you might not be a confident person or you might not have much self-awareness, but the people with the human skills can lift you up and help you get there, right? Mm-hmm. And that's something that I think is really important to understand. So if people don't come to you, if people don't seek your advice, if people don't share their wins with you, if people don't ask you to fill in when they're away for them, it's maybe showing that there's sort of like a lack of trust there or something that maybe you're not doing as well. So I think it does take a bit of reading between the lines, because as honest as we may like to think we all are, any of us would struggle giving somebody negative feedback, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you don't have well-developed human skills, you actually might just not be receiving the feedback that you really need to grow. Mm-hmm. So yeah, are you being ignored? I would ask yourself as well.
Right. And I agree with you. You know, it's sad and it's not a good display of leadership. I'll give you a quick story example of maybe where I wasn't using my human skills to their fullest potential, but I did have a leader that shared feedback with me that probably was uncomfortable for him. One of my best human skills is listening, and listening with empathy. And I did my best with this leader to take diligent notes on paper and then also at times on my computer when I would go into one-on-one conversations. And I might take 80% of notes on what we talked about, but I might miss 20% here and there. And that 20% included some really important information or tasks that I was just missing and was falling through the cracks. And so 2 weeks later, when I went into a one-on-one with him, I was planning to ask him at the start of our one-on-one do you mind if I record this so that I can transcribe it later and then use that as notes so that I can just listen intently and showcase my human skills to the best of my ability in this conversation. And then the note-taking part that maybe was only doing I was doing 80% well before, I can do 100% well on the back end. Now, because I tested this out a few minutes before the meeting started, my supervisor saw it. And I didn't intend for him to see it, and I didn't expect him to respond this way, but he immediately shut it down. And he was like, no, you cannot record this. So I didn't record it. 2 weeks later, I met with him again, and it sounds like he had some time to reflect. And he said, the reason why I didn't want you to record this was not necessarily because I didn't feel like it would help you and your productivity, but it made me feel like you don't trust me in these one-on-one conversations. Therefore, you need to record it. And that makes me feel like Dan is going to report me to HR, or Dan, is going to use something I say in a one-on-one conversation against me at some point in time. I was very apologetic, and I told him it was in no way a way for me to use it against him, but I explained the story, and I think he understood it. But I think that was an example where he was being a good leader because he was giving me constructive feedback on something I did that I thought was a strength that actually made him feel a different way. And then I knew, okay, listening and empathy can still be some of my best human skills to exemplify on a daily basis. But I have to be cautious of how those skills or what tools I'm using and how it makes others feel. It was an interesting experience and definitely a learning lesson. Make sure you over communicate intent of things at times before you actually do it.
Definitely. Yeah. That story is so interesting because it actually sort of shows this relationship as well between human skills and technical skills, and how sort of you're using one to complement the other as well, which I find super interesting in the whole human skills conversation. But yeah, that's really, really interesting. And see, it's the self-reflection that your manager went away with as well and used human skills to come back and understand yours. And it's just goes to show that it's just like this whole web, isn't it? Mm-hmm. This whole web, and it's all just so connected, and we're more connected than we all think that we are as well.
Absolutely. So speaking of technical skills versus human skills, one of the things that I know that you have become kind of an expert on in your speaking and educating is how folks can leverage hard skills with the use of AI with human skills. Obviously, you showcase human skills all the time, but do you use AI or other common technologies to perform your work?
Yeah, I do. And funnily enough, I use transcription software. And I do love using AI to speed up my workflows and things. So a lot of my work is about generating ideas. Now, my ideas come to me much better when I'm speaking than writing. So I spend a lot of time talking to myself in my office, and I use an AI-powered transcription software to transcribe what I'm saying so that I don't miss anything, just like what you were trying to do in that meeting. So I don't need to write my thoughts down as I speak them, right? And I also like using, and this comes from my research background, AI-powered tools that are used for research. So once I've got all of my ideas and notes together, I use a tool to run a thematic analysis of my notes to summarize or pick out the main themes, which helps me keep laser focused on my ideas. Because if I try and do some kind of analysis manually, you would better believe that I am sprouting off all of these other ideas in different directions and going off and looking in different areas and on different topics. So it saves me a lot of time and it keeps me laser focused, I think.
We all know ChatGPT, but any common AI tools that you'd suggest to anyone when it comes to workflow or productivity?
Yeah, so for my kind of workflow, so I use a transcription software called Otter AI. And then things for summaries or thematic analysis and things like that. So for summaries, I would do ChatGPT as well, just like you've described. And there is a research tool that's called Dovetail that I came across in my previous job. And that's really good for analyzing themes and things like that.
Awesome. Thanks for the tip. I'll have to dive into those. So how critical do you feel is not only adopting those tools, but using and then reflecting on how to optimize use of those?
Well, I think that one thing that's true about AI is that it's here and it's happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're someone that feels resistant to adopting and using I think you're someone that's going to get left behind. And it's likely that a lot of people are actually using AI already without realizing it. Voice recognition, like Siri, is powered by AI. The application that transcribes your meetings so that you don't have to make notes, it's AI. If you use ChatGPT, you've used AI, right? So many people will have used it, even if it's on quite a small scale. But I think the most serious point, and it is really quite serious, on adopting AI and using AI is that it's your chance to contribute to its creation, which is critical. And what I mean by that is that we are all responsible for what AI will become, because the information that we feed it is what it will turn into. So if we feed AI language that is racist or sexist or ableist, AI will become those things. And we would have ended up reproducing the worst of humanity. So AI needs to be trained. And if we adopt AI and if we use AI, we can train it. So I think that is the most critical thing, is understanding that it's in all of our hands to contribute to it and to turn it into something that works for us and with us and that isn't reproducing the worst possible things of humanity. And the more human we are with AI, I think the more human AI could be as well, right?
Mm-hmm. So what would you say to someone that feels like AI is showcasing biases? So if I ask AI tell me about bananas, and it responds and says, bananas are yellow, bananas are grown in this part of the world, and bananas are delicious. Well, could bananas being delicious be somewhat influenced by the fact that you and I might have typed into AI that bananas are delicious? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's how we are all contributing to it, because whatever we are inputting, whatever we are feeding the machine with, let's say, is what it's learning. It's almost like AI is a child and we are the parents, and the upbringing that we give that child, the way that we as humans bring AI up, is the way that it's going to experience things and perceive the world and go out and interact with people in certain ways, right? So if we can give it a good upbringing and if we can all contribute to that, then we could actually make AI something that is useful and helpful and doesn't have biases as well.
I agree with that. It sounds to me like the more we use it and as many people as possible that use it and try to understand it, the more holistic the responses and hopefully unbiased the responses and use cases of AI are going to become. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. It needs to be trained. And so if we adopt it and if we use it, we can train it. And the more human we are, perhaps the more human AI could be as well, or its output at least.
Awesome. So if someone is using AI, let's say every day, or they're new to it and they want to get to the comfort level of using it every day, are there any risks or harms to doing so?
Yeah. So I think broadly, AI is only going to get smarter because its capacity for learning is far greater than our capacity for learning. I'll use a language example because it's my background. So let's take, for example, human translation and machine translation. Now, a human can translate a sentence from English into Spanish. The human might make a mistake and learn from that mistake. But only one human learns from that mistake because only one human experienced it, right? A machine can translate the same sentence from English into Spanish and make the same mistake. But when a machine makes a mistake, all machine translators will learn from it. And that includes the machines that haven't been created yet as well. Mm-hmm. So when AI learns something, it learns something. Mm-hmm. Do I think that it could replace us? I think that's somewhat up to us as well. Because again, what are we feeding it? What are we teaching it? Mm-hmm. If we're teaching AI things like values and how to be compassionate through what we feed it, then we're likely enhancing our human skills via AI. I've seen this really awesome tool. It's related to coaching. Now, I'm not a coach, but I understand that there is a way for people to upload their body of work to AI so that people can ask the AI version of that person questions and get a response. And some people are using that for coaching to help more people. Now, how accurate it is at the moment, I'm not entirely sure, but it exists in some form and it's being developed. So yeah, there's a lot to think about in terms of risks and in terms of who are we actually speaking to? Are we speaking to a person right now? Are we speaking to a person's body of work? Are we speaking to an AI version of a person? And they're all things that are going to evolve over time and will become clearer. But for the moment, AI has a huge capacity to learn and much greater than our capacity to learn as humans.
So one of the strengths of Gen Z that you and I both know is the use of technology. They grew up on it, they use it diligently, they understand it and can pivot toward it faster and more comfortably than a majority of working professionals. But studies show that maybe a third of those Gen Zers that are using AI are feeling guilty about their use of it. So for example, I'm going to give my example of using it to transcribe meetings. I was not at a 6-hour training a few weeks ago. And so rather than me sitting and watching the entire recording, I used AI to synthesize part of it. And then I would go back to bits and pieces of the recording that I felt were important. I felt the pros of time efficiency outweighed the cons of not necessarily using critical thinking. Regardless, though, folks can feel guilty when they use it to replace some of those hard or soft skills. So what would you say to a Gen Zer's boss who's not necessarily all about the use of AI? And also for the folks that are feeling guilty about using it, what would you say to them?
This is such an interesting point, especially on a feeling of guilt as well. I think the first thing to say is that there's a level of discernment that's needed, right? It depends on the way that you use AI. If you're using it, or if you've got employees or staff that are using it to write a short email to a colleague, come on, you could have engaged your brain to do that yourself, let's be honest. Or if you're using it to write an entire university or college essay, and then you're just submitting it without much thought or attention or critical thinking, then you're not engaging your brain again. And then therefore you're not engaging in your critical thinking skills. However, if, for example, you've got someone working in events, in the event sector, and they're asked to get locations, hotels, prices, and dates for an upcoming conference, ChatGPT can pull that together for you to save you from scouring the internet to find all of that information and the best deals. Now, you wouldn't feel guilty for doing that. You'd be feeling kind of smart, right? That you'd save yourself so much time and delivered to your boss what they wanted. So if engaging your brain for a particular task is going to help you in the long run, then use your brain. If engaging your brain is going to perhaps waste your time, then maybe use AI. Now, of course, I'm oversimplifying this because using AI doesn't mean that you're not using your brain, of course. But what I'm saying is for people to ask themselves, how can AI save my time and my energy with the things that I perhaps don't need to do anymore because it does it just as well? And then the second point on feeling guilty takes me back to what I mentioned earlier, in that we are all responsible for what AI becomes through the information that we feed it. So I'd say instead of feeling guilty for using it, see it as your chance to contribute to society in a positive way.
So how do you hold yourself accountable if you find yourself feeling great and smart when it's a good use of time to use it? Maybe when you do have a paper that you need to write and you procrastinated on it, and now you're thinking about time, how do you hold yourself accountable?
You know, you can use it, for example, to create the structure of your essay, right? Or to summarize papers so that you don't have to read through the papers to get the key points. AI can do that for you. So there are different ways of using it to speed up time and hold yourself accountable to actually using critical thinking skills to write the essay yourself and using AI for everything that's going to save you time, I think.
I love it. Great. We've unpacked human skills. We've unpacked what AI is and use cases of it and how to use it to your benefit. How do you feel like is a successful way to marry the two of those together?
I love this question because it's not a competition between human and machine. That's the first thing I think we need to remember. It's a collaboration. it's us asking ourselves, how can we work with AI? And you're right, how can they complement each other? Now, I experienced this myself in a previous job when I was working as a translator. I had a client who wanted me to just check that a machine translation was grammatically correct. Okay. So they'd taken away the literal job of translation from me and gave it to probably Google Translate or something like that. Now, if anyone has experience of translation, they'll know that there would have been more errors than just grammatical errors in a machine translation, because machine translation still misunderstands the context or the irony or the nuances that at the moment only humans can detect. And in this instance, AI did the translation and a human, me, came along to maintain the quality by correcting mistranslations, making the text sound like it had been written by a human or translated by a human. And at the moment, AI is complementing humans by helping us get through work in a shorter amount of time. And humans are complementing AI by helping maintain the quality of the work and maintaining the quality of the output that needs to happen. And as we do this, we train AI to understand how to, for example, translate better, how to translate like a human. And so over time, for translation specifically, we could see the human role transforming from correcting to monitoring, right? Now, the question, how can I work with AI, is a question that we need to frequently ask, because this is going to evolve quick. It's going to be fast. And I understand that people are afraid of losing their jobs to AI, but I really think that the only thing that will make us unemployable is not having human skills. Compassion, empathy, self-reflection, emotional intelligence, what I was saying earlier about supporting and celebrating other people. No matter what job or career you have, these are the things that will make you stand out. And if your role transforms, like I'm seeing it transforming in a translator's role right now, from translator to quality controller to light moderation, it's the people who ask themselves, how can I use my human skills to make this better, that will do well? How can I use my human skills to complement what I can do that will do well in their careers?
Very well said. What are some of the things that are top of mind for you when you think about your new side hustle turned full hustle?
Yeah, the full hustle is very exciting right now. So at the moment, I am coming to the end of working on a campaign to inspire the graduating class of 2024 to build their human skills. So I've created some workshops to help people build their confidence, courage, and self-belief. And we've crowdsourced advice now from 70 people who have shared one thing that they wish they knew about work or life. And so that's very exciting. And I'm also creating a learning hub, slowly but surely, of articles and workshops to help people build the human skills needed for work and life. It's a work in progress at the moment, but it's happening slowly as I publish something every week there. And then, of course, another focus that I'm excited about is to just keep going out and delivering workshops, career development workshops to corporates and universities and, different communities, all to help people build their human skills. And that's always the best bit of my work, because it satisfies this kind of need that I have, I think, for human connection.
If people want to connect with you directly or learn from you, what are the best ways to either find your content or to get in touch?
Sure. So you can get in touch at theblocksacademy.com. Also, we're on social media at The Blocks Academy, and LinkedIn just as me, as Hayley Dawson.
Amazing.
I'd love to hear from people as well.
Yeah. And as I mentioned before, you pump out content across those platforms all the time. You have a newsletter, which I think is outstanding. And you cover so many really unique topics related to emotional intelligence, courage, building your curiosity, all that stuff. So to anyone that's just interested in learning about how to just think as an educated or a person of knowledge, I recommend. So, but Hayley, I want to thank you for spending so much time with me today. Such an insightful conversation. Thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you. I've loved your insightful questions and chatting to you. Thank you so much.